Hello, students. Mr. Madison here with a video key for you. This is a key. I'm going to work the problems out to your latest mini quiz. I believe it's mini quiz number 17. And I thought that having you watch me work the problems would be more beneficial to you. I was a little worried that you weren't getting some of this, so I wanted to provide for you the best key I could, and I just thought that if I'm explaining and you could watch the problems unfold as I solve them, that it would be helpful to you. I'm concerned that when you get these problems on your quiz next week, that you'll be able to do them. So I just wanted to make sure that I gave you every opportunity to learn how to do these problems. Many of them are review. All of them deal with linear functions in one aspect or another. So let's just get started. The very first problem was a problem that involved Truong's Taco Shop. And in this problem, we're told that the tacos sell for $8.95. So I'm going to let X be my variable that represents simply the number of tacos. So the revenue that comes into the taco shop would be given by the cost of a taco times the number of tacos. So that would be $8.95 X. And it says that it costs $6.55 to actually make the taco, and that the restaurant has fixed overhead costs of $7,200 a month. So I'm going to create what I call a cost function. And every time a taco is produced, it costs $6.55. So 655X represents the cost of producing X tacos. But there's fixed overhead costs at the restaurant of $7,200 a month. Fixed overhead costs include things like utility costs and insurance and things of that nature. Then the question asks, how many tacos, so we're going to solve for X, how many tacos does Truong have to sell to realize a monthly profit of $18,000? Well, to create a profit function, what you're going to do is you're going to take the total amount of money that comes into the business, and that would be your revenue function, and you're going to subtract all your expenses, all your costs. So that would be your cost function. So just generally then, your profit is equal to your revenue minus your costs. So my profit function then for this problem would be 8.95X minus, and I need to put in parentheses, my cost function, which is 6.55X plus 7,200. And if I clean this up a little bit by removing those parentheses, 8.95 minus 6.55 would be what? 240 X. But this negative here, of course, needs to get distributed. So I'd have minus 7,200 here. All right, so this then is my profit function based upon the information given in the problem. And then the problem asks, what does X have to be, or how many tacos do you have to sell in order to realize a profit of $18,000? So all I'm going to do is take $18,000 and set it equal to this expression that represents the profit. then we're going to solve. I'm going to pull out the calculator just to expedite all this. I've got 18,000. I'm adding 7,200. So let's see, 18,000 plus 7,200. Got 25,200 is equal to 2.40x. And when I divide by 2.4, I'm coming up with 10,500 for my value for x. So to kind of put a little explanation with our answer there, what this would mean is that Tron is going to have to sell 10,500 tacos per month to realize a profit of $18,000. So that would be the answer to that question. Problem number 2 talks about a shipment of spud bars and sledgehammers, and it's given a total weight, and then a second shipment of so many spud bars and so many sledgehammers, and then it's given a total weight. Each of those statements in the problem would generate an equation. So when you have, I'm going to let S represent the weight of a spud bar. And if you don't know what a spud bar is, it's a long, heavy steel pole, and it has a diameter of maybe an inch, inch and a quarter, and it could be used as a pry bar. It could be used to dig holes in the ground. It's a heavy tool is what it is. And then I'm going to let, let's see, I'm going to let H represent the sledgehammers, the weight of the sledgehammers. And the problem says that if you have 12 spud bars and you have 7 sledgehammers, that the total weight would be 518 pounds. A second shipment of 6 spud bars and 13 hammers would have a total weight of 392 pounds. And the question that's being asked is, what does a spud bar weigh? What does a spud bar weigh? Well, let's do this. Let's take, and by the way, these two equations together form a linear system. And what makes it a system is the fact that in each equation, the S and the H have the exact same value. In other words, the spud bar weighs the same for both equations, and the hammer weighs the same for both equations. Since we're tasked with finding the weight of the spud bar, let's eliminate H. And I know it'd probably be easier to eliminate S, but we're going to go ahead and eliminate H so we can get our answer right away. And I'm going to take this first equation and I'm going to multiply it by 13. And I'm going to take the second equation and multiply it by 7. And this is going to generate 2 equivalent equations. Let's see, I'd have 13 times 12s, which would be 156s. And then 7 times 13 would be 91h. And that has to equal 518 times 13. And that's 6734. I'm multiplying each term in this second equation by 7, so that would give me 42s and 91h. And now I'm doing 392 times 7 to get 2744. I would then subtract these two equations to eliminate the h variable. 156 minus 42 would be 114s, and that's going to equal, check my arithmetic on that, 6734 minus 2744. Okay. Then I'm going to divide both sides of this by 114. And I'm coming up with 35. So the question to this problem, is, what does a spud bar weigh? And the answer is 35 pounds. Let's go to problem number 3. Problem number 3 gives us 2 points. A point E that has coordinates 1/3 and 4/5, and a point F which has coordinates 3/10 and -7/6. And here's what the problem asks. It says, write the equation in slope-intercept form. So my final answer is going to look like this: y equals mx plus b. It says, write the equation in slope-intercept form of any other line that is parallel to the line EF. Well, the premise here is that if the lines are parallel, then their slopes are equal. So what I need to do then is I need to find the slope of line EF. So just go into my slope formula, which requires me to subtract my y coordinates in the numerator. And I'm going to do 4/5 minus -7/6. So this needs to change to a plus 7/6 because of the double negative. And then in the denominator, I subtract my x coordinates. So I've got 1/3 minus 3/10. So typically what I do when I have a complex fraction like this is I eliminate the fractions in the numerator and the denominator. So I'm looking at 5, 6, 10, and 3. And the least common denominator, or the least common multiple, if you would be 30. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to multiply everything on top by 30, and I'm going to multiply everything on the bottom by 30. Of course, when I multiply both top and bottom by 30, I'm really just multiplying the entire expression by 1. So just kind of thinking out loud here, 30 divided by 5 is 6 times 4 would be 24. 30 divided by 6 is 5 times 7 would be 35. 30 divided by 3 is 10 times 1 is 10. 30 divided by 10 is 3 times 3 is 9. So on the top, I guess I would have 59. And on the bottom, I would have 1. So the slope of line EF is 59. And the problem asks me to write the equation of any other line that would be parallel to that line in slope-intercept form. So it's going to be y equals 59x. And then my y-intercept can be anything. So I'm just gonna put a star there to represent any number. In fact, you can even just say y equals 59x. You don't even have to have a y-intercept. And that would work for problem number 3. Problem number 4 says, consider the point 18, point G, says, consider the point G with coordinates 18, -32, and the point H with coordinates 22, -10. And the question that it asks in reference to these 2 points is this: how far away from the origin is the midpoint of line segment GH? So sort of a two-step process. We'll figure out what the midpoint is first, and then we'll figure out how far that point is away from the origin. Your midpoint of a line segment, whenever you're finding it, think about finding the average. So the midpoint here is going to be the average of your x's and the average of your y's. So the average of the x's would be 18 plus 22, of course, then divided by 2. And the average of your y coordinates would be negative 32 minus 10 divided by 2. And that's going to give me, 40 over 2 and negative 42 over 2. So the midpoint is 20, negative 21. So how about if I make a quick coordinate axis here? And I'll plot that point. I'm going to go over 20 and down 21. So right here is the midpoint. That's the midpoint with coordinates 20, 21. And the question is, how far away from the origin is that? So we're trying to find this distance from the origin to that point. I'll just call it D. We'll just go ahead and let D represent the hypotenuse of a right triangle, and we'll draw in a right triangle. And then this would be 20, and this would be 21. And D, using the Pythagorean theorem, would be equal to the square root of 20 squared plus 21 squared. And I think the numbers 20, 21, 29 form a Pythagorean triple. So I think this is going to be 29 ultimately. So just to run through that problem again, the first thing we did was we found the midpoint, which involves just finding the average of your x's and the average of your y's. We plotted the point. We drew in a line segment that represented the distance from the origin to that point. Then we created a right triangle, and we applied the ever-faithful Pythagorean theorem to find the value of D. It turns out to be 29. Let's look at problem number 5. Problem number 5 gives you two linear equations, y equals x and y equals x plus 100. Now, something I noticed right away about these two lines, they are parallel. You know, they both have a slope of 1. All right. What's it ask us to find? It says, find the perpendicular distance between the lines as an exact value. So when it says as an exact value, we probably won't utilize a calculator too much. How about if we get a picture? So I'm going to make a coordinate axis here. And I'm going to just roughly graph those two lines. Y equals x goes right through the middle here. If you recall, y equals x with a slope of 1 would be at 45 degrees to the x-axis. So this is the line y equals x. Now the line y equals x plus 100 runs parallel to this line, but has a y-intercept of 100. So I'll just let this point be 100 here. And I'm going to try to draw a parallel line here. So this is the line y equals x plus 100. Now, we're asked to find the perpendicular distance between the two lines. So I'm going to draw in a line that goes right through the origin here and is perpendicular. So I'm going to try to make this neat. it's important for us that this line is perpendicular. So we have a right angle right here, and we have a right angle right here. All right. And our job is to figure out how far it is from this point to this point. So I'm going to call that D. I'm going to call that D. All right. Now, this point right here is the origin. It has coordinate 0, 0. This point right here, we don't know the coordinates. We'll just, for a moment, we'll say that the coordinates of that point are X, Y. And the reason I'm bringing up the coordinates of that point is this. If we knew those points, if we had those values for X and Y, all we would have to do is plug into the distance formula, or we could just kind of make a right triangle and do Pythagorean theorem. So I think that to find the answer to this question, we need to figure out the values of X and Y. So how are we going to do that? Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to find the point of intersection of this line, y equals x plus 100, and this line. Now let's think about this line right here. Since it's perpendicular, it has to have a slope that's equal to the opposite reciprocal of these lines. So the slope of these lines is 1. So the slope of this line has to be -1. In addition, this line goes through the origin, so it has a y-intercept of 0. So the equation for this line is just very simply y equals -x. So to find the coordinates of this point that I'm pointing to with my black felt tip pen, we need to find the point of intersection between two lines. The first line is y equals x plus 100. And the second line is y equals -x. And those two equations form a system. They form a system because we're looking for xy here, and that's the only ordered pair that would work in both of these equations. So when I go to solve this, I'm just going to say that this x plus 100, which is equal to y, has to equal -x. So I'm going to say x plus 100 has to equal -x. Or if I bring this x over, I'd have 2x. And if I bring the 100 over, it has to equal -100. So x turns out to be -50. And if x is -50, then y is +50. And if you look at where this point is located, it makes sense. You'd have to go back 50 and up 50. So this point right here is the point -50, +50. So when I go to use my distance formula, the distance formula looks like this. And again, it's just derived from the Pythagorean theorem. I would subtract my x coordinates and square, and I would subtract my y coordinates and square. But we'll just go ahead and do that. The x coordinate here is -50. The x coordinate for this point right here is 0 because it's the origin. So what I'm going to have then is 50 squared. The same thing with the y, 50 minus 0, and I'm going to have plus 50 squared. Now that's going to give me, I'm going to save a step here. That's going to give me 2 times 50 squared. And then when you take the square root of 50 squared, you just get 50. And then the 2 stays under there. And I would not change this to a decimal approximation only because the problem says to find the answer as an exact value. So let's rehash this problem. I made a picture. You know, the diagram always helps when you're solving problems. If you can create a diagram, do it. I graphed the two lines. I drew in the perpendicular to go right through the origin. Then I said, you know, if I could find these coordinates right here, then I could just use my distance formula. Or I could make a right triangle here and use Pythagorean theorem, which amounts to the same thing as the distance formula. So I needed to find those coordinates. So what I did was I set up a little system, and I said that those points, those coordinates would be the solution to the system of equations. And the two equations would be y equals x plus 100 and y equals negative x. And I know I got this equation because I know it's perpendicular, so the slope would have to be the opposite reciprocal. And so then I solved the system, got my two values for x and y, did the Pythagorean theorem, and I got my distance. Problem done. That's a nice problem, I think. Let's see what's in store with number 6. Problem number 6 gives us 2 points again. It gives us a point A with coordinates -4, 8. And it gives us a point B with coordinates 20, -2. And what does it ask us? It says, write the equation in slope-intercept form of the perpendicular bisector of line segment AB. Well, we can get a little visual here if you would like. B is at 20, -2, so let's say B is like right about here. And A is at -4, 8. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, -4, 8. I don't know, right about here, let's say. So that's A. And it's at -4, 8. So this would be line segment AB here. And we're charged with writing the equation for the perpendicular bisector, which I'll just kind of estimate where that is. That would be this line right here. So that's our goal, to write the equation for this line. Now, the fact that it's a bisector means that it has to go through this midpoint. So our first order of business is to determine the midpoint. So the midpoint of line segment AB would be the average of the x's and the average of the y's. So I'm just going to kind of verbalize. -4 plus 20 would be 16. And then when I divide by 2, I get 8. 8 and -2 gives me 6. And I divide by 2, I get 3. So this point right here is the point 8, 3. So now we have a point that this line contains. It's the point 8, 3. Now, in order to write the equation for the line, you have to know its slope. Well, since it's the perpendicular bisector, it has to have a slope that's the opposite reciprocal of the slope of line segment AB. So I'm going to find the slope of line segment AB. And that would require me to subtract my y coordinates on top. So I'm going to have -2 minus 8 and subtract my x coordinates on the bottom. I'll have 20 minus -4, which becomes 20 plus 4. Now, cleaning this up a little bit, it gives me a -10 on top, and it gives me a positive 24 on the bottom, which reducifies down to -5/12. So at this point, the problem has boiled down to this. I need to write the equation for this line, and I know I have all the information I need to do that. I know the point that it contains is the point 8, 3, and I know it has a slope of -5/12. Now, my usual procedure for writing the equation for a line is to use this form. I usually write y minus y1 equals m, which is the slope, times x minus x1. And this is called the point slope form. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I don't know what you learned in algebra about how to write the equation for the line. This is what I teach. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to put 8 in for x sub 1. I'm going to put 3 in for y sub 1. I'm going to put negative 5/12 in for m, and then I'm going to just do a little algebra to get it into slope-intercept form. So I'm going to have y minus 3 equals negative 5/12 times x minus 8. So that would give me y minus 3 equals, I'm distributing this fraction, negative 5/12 x, and then that's going to be plus, and let's see, 4 goes in there twice, and 4 goes in there 3 times. So I'm going to have plus 10/3. Almost home. I'm just going to add 3 to both sides. So that would give me y equals negative 5/12 x. When I add 3, I'm going to add 3 as 9/3. So that's going to be plus 19/3. And that would be my answer. Let's recap this, or kind of review this problem. This problem gave us 2 points and merely asked us to write the equation for the perpendicular bisector of that line segment, AB. So we had to do 2 things. We had to find the midpoint, and we did that by finding the average. It turned out that the midpoint is 8,3, and you get that by doing negative 4 plus 20, and then divide by 2, and 8 plus negative 2, and then divide by 2. Then since it's perpendicular, it has to have a slope that's the opposite reciprocal. You know what? I completely messed that up. And you know, it's kind of good that I did that because that's a very common error. Here's what happened. When I found the slope for AB here, I completely forgot to take the opposite reciprocal of it. So we got to do a restart here. This work right here, is now null and void. So let's kind of get a new piece of paper. Here's what we got. We've got our point slope form. And I'm going to plug in the point 8, 3 for x sub 1 and y sub 1. And I know that my slope now has to be the opposite reciprocal of negative 5/12, which would be positive 12/5. All right. So here we go. I'm going to have y minus 3 equals 12/5 times x minus 8. I'm going to distribute this guy. So I have y minus 3 equals 12/5 x minus, and that'd be 96/5. Then I need to come back and add 3 to both sides. And when I add 3, I'm going to add 3 in the form of 15/5. So that would give me minus 81/5. That would be the answer. So I think that because I messed up on that, we need to run through it again. We're given 2 points. We're asked to write the equation for the perpendicular bisector. So what we did was we found the midpoint, because the bisector always goes through the midpoint. And that turned out to be the point 8, 3. Then we found the slope of AB, which turned out to be negative 5/12. Then we took the opposite reciprocal of that, because when lines are perpendicular, that's the relationship between their slopes. And the opposite reciprocal would be 12/5. So then I had all the information I needed to write my equation. I plugged into what I call point slope form. I put this 3 in for y sub 1. I put this 8 in for x sub 1. And then I put 12/5 in for m and did my arithmetic. So there you have it. I'm kind of glad we're done with that problem. Let's go on. Let's do number 7, the last problem. And I could tell you want me to hurry. What do we know? Company A stock has an initial value of $12 per share and is increasing at a rate of 75 cents per month. So let's let X represent the number of months. So for Company A, the value of its stock, Company A, the value of its stock is going to be $12, because that's where it's starting, that's its initial value, plus 75 cents each month times X. So after 1 month, the value of the stock would be $12.75. After 2 months, it would be 12 plus 75 times 2, et cetera, et cetera. And for Company B, it says that the initial value is $20 per share, and that the company's value is increasing at a rate of 35 cents per month. Now we're going to let Y be the value of the stock. So I'm going to put Y there and Y there. So the value of the stock for Company A is $12, and then as time goes on, add 75 cents every month. For Company B, the initial value, Y, is $20, and then as time goes on, add 35 cents every month. And the question is, after how many months, so we're trying to figure out what X is, after how many months will Company A and Company B have the same value in their stock? So pretty much this becomes a system then. And I'm just going to take 12 plus 0.75x and substitute it right there for Y. So I'm going to have 12 plus 0.75x. I'm going to set that equal to 20 plus 0.35x. Now, how about if we subtract 0.35x from both sides? That would give us 0.40x. And if we subtract 12 from both sides, that would give us 8. And then x then would equal 8 divided by 0.4, which of course would be the same as 80 divided by 4, which is 20. So this problem then, the question is, after how many months would the value of Company A stock and Company B stock be the same? And the answer is 20. 20 months. That's how long it would take. I apologize for my error on problem number 6 and taking up your time, but it kind of, in a way, it's kind of good that happened, because that's just a really common error, and it could happen, obviously, to anybody. So I'm hopeful that this video key is helpful to you. I appreciate your attention. You all have a great day.